Biochemistry is the study of the basic mechanisms of the cell related to all the activities that the cell has to do. I am not a biochemist. I am originally a medical doctor, and I train as a pharmacologist, but I have been doing research in many areas. I like pathophysiological problems, and I like to be involved in solving pathophysiological problems and in finding solutions for pathophysiological problems. Well, the first influence in my career was a professor of pharmacology I had at the University of El Salvador, where I studied medicine in Central America. He was a pharmacologist working on catecholamines, and the very first research I did was in pharmacology. Then an important influence was a Brazilian scientist, a pharmacologist, Sergio Ferreira, who is the man who discovered the peptide from the Botrop jararaca that led to the discovery of captopril as an antihypertensive agent. In pharmacology and in science, those probably are important people for me. I think that it's important to emphasize translational research because of the practical benefits that we are looking for. But we have to remember that if there is no fundamental research, there is nothing to translate. So I would argue that we should be supporting translational research, but making absolutely sure that basic research is well supported, because from there are going to come the next problems that we are going to translate. If we just do translational research, the pond will dry up. Well, I had several teachers who were good teachers at the time. My chemistry teacher in secondary school, and then I had a very good biology teacher who was actually a German biologist who was spending a sabbatical in El Salvador, and she taught biology, and I got very enthusiastic about the subject with her. I think science education should start as early as possible. It's very important because we are living in a world which is increasingly influenced and determined by scientific discoveries and scientific advances. So, and we need to spread the scientific way of thinking. There are many ways of knowing reality, and the scientific way is the superior one. I think they are indicators or measurements. They are poor, as all the systems of evaluating the impact of science are, but are reference points. I think there is too much emphasis given to them at the moment, and everybody is measuring things in a detailed way. I think the impact of a paper can only be measured 10 years after it has been published, and the real effects of that contribution can be analyzed. Having said that, we have to have a way of measuring. I don't like it. I don't use it. I never pay attention to it. But I suppose for the majority of the research, we have to have a measurement. The problem there is that the most fundamental discoveries very often cannot be evaluated in the short term and cannot be measured until many, many years later. All right? The problem we have in science at the moment is how do we identify, how do we support, and how do we nurture innovation? Because the agencies that give money to the bulk of research, which is not innovative, is adding systematically to knowledge which exists. What we need is breakthrough, 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 and identify when we can make it. I think it's fundamental, that relationship. I don't see it as a pitching, just a teaching relationship, but it should be a mentorship relationship in which the mentor plays a much wider and deeper role than just teaching you to do the mechanics of the experiment. Very often, more often than not, the level in science that you achieve, if you have a reasonable brain, depends on who was your mentor, who were the people that you initially got in contact with. I think it's very important, the relationship. It's very important to find ways of developing it into a mentorship rather than just a teaching. Well, I think the first thing that we should do, which Latin American countries don't do, including Brazil, is that we should spend much more of our gross national product in science and technology. I don't know how much Brazil is spending, but basically around 1% or less. That's ridiculous. The European community and the developed countries are talking about 2.5–3% of gross national product, of a gross national product which is much bigger. And we are barely achieving the 1%, the best of us. There is no way of getting a scientific base like that. And the second thing is that if you make a decision about supporting science, it should not be the first thing you cut when you have a crisis. All right, the support of science should be not touched because of the strategic potential. What we do in our countries is the first thing we do is to cut science, all right, and argue that there are more important immediate things. That's a short-term vision, that's a narrow vision. So let's be serious about supporting science by increasing the amount of money we put into it. Let's be serious about not cutting it when the crisis comes, and have a much more robust program of training and reabsorbing personnel. We send a lot of people outside, and we don't ensure that when they come back they have the conditions of work that they would require to be productive. It doesn't need to be like the United States, because Brazilians want to come back to Brazil. But it cannot be that there is no way of doing science.